Welcome inside another edition of Frankly Hockey. I'm Kate Pettersen alongside NHL insider Frank Seravalli. And Frank, we've got some breaking news coming down that the Winnipeg Jets will be without Connor Hellebuyck for 4 to 6 weeks as he's going to have arthroscopic knee surgery. And Frank, it sounds like this was something that was lingering and they identified this as a good time to get it done. What have you heard?
Yeah, I mean, look, if this is a problem that's happened for Connor Hellebuyck and he's been managing, trying to work through, I don't think that makes any sense over the course of the long haul for the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, there's that push and pull between, hey, we need you out there and performing versus we need you at your absolute best when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs. And so to me, kind of a no-brainer. And I think obviously everyone wants to manage the timeline. Connor Hellebuyck is supposed to be the guy for Team USA at the Olympics. 4 to 6 week time frame should have him back playing potentially even before Christmas, but shouldn't have any impact on the Olympics. And in fact, hopefully he can be a little bit stronger once they get in there and clean up that knee a bit.
Yeah, and a quick question on that for Bill Guerin and his role. How communicative is he with the teams, knowing he's got a couple of bigger injuries or guys out to keep tabs on as we get closer to that deadline?
Yeah, for sure. There's constant communication. Agents are involved too. And obviously teams aren't loving to relay information to rival general managers. But luckily, at least for some of the injuries that have occurred to this point in time, he also has some of those general managers on his staff for Team USA as well. Think of Tom Fitzgerald with the New Jersey Devils as Jack Hughes cut his finger. I mean, those two guys know each other going way back, but they're also working together on Team USA. So the information sharing is seamless. Kevin Cheveldayoff, obviously a Canadian, not part of the Team USA experience, but certainly the Jets are fully cooperative in helping communicate whatever needs to be shared between the Jets and Team USA.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, a team in the West that is struggling. And Frank, I think what's most alarming to me is we looked at this long road trip for the Edmonton Oilers as an opportunity to be a turning point. And it hasn't been the turning point in the right direction, dropping 3 in a row. And they've allowed 23 goals in their last 5 games, only 1 win in that stretch. So what stands out to you about the play of the Oilers and what sort of red flags are going off here with this group?
They just can't seem to have anything go right for them. So let's look at Thursday night's game in Tampa, right? They're playing the second of a back-to-back. They're tired. This road trip, I mean, look at the calendar. It's been a trip from hell. It's a long trip. It's like 15 days. And with that, you go, how do you find a way to break through here? The trip started 9 days ago now in Philadelphia. And look, they play a good game. They play one of their better games in a while against the Lightning on Thursday night. And then this happens, this sequence in overtime, which is just epic. And the call, I wish we had the audio for this because our pal John Butchergross, I mean, it was so frenetic, the action, that he could barely catch his breath. He was gasping for air because the saves from Vasilevsky, I still don't know how he made it. This one, sure. It's the second one or third one, I guess you'd call it, that is bananas. And then there's just so much poise in every part of the sequence because Nikita Kucherov takes his time to allow Jake Gensel to join the rush. And it's beautiful on so many levels, but our conversation is about the Oilers. And it's like, we should have scored, should have won an OT, and right, at the flip of a coin, 10 seconds later, we're on the losing side of this. And so they play a good game. They get stomped in OT. You play poor games, including there were some stretches of the game in Philly that were good, but they've won games that they shouldn't have won. Go back to that calendar for a second. I mean, the game against Columbus last Monday night, they had no business winning that game. They were brutal. They win in OT. The Flyers, they should have lost. They were 1-1 in the final minute. Everyone's trying to milk out a point, and the Flyers scored with 23 seconds left. It should have been over then. The game got called back, and they happened to win in OT. So they've had some luck. It's gone both ways. But in the end, you're right. I mean, just look at this week. 5 goals against, 7 goals against. Last night, only 2. But they've got to find a way to be better. if you're looking for some kind of positive, Kate, if you're an Oiler fan, it's hard because you're really looking for a goaltending swap. You're looking to make a change
Right.
in net, which maybe they could bring up Connor Ingram and see if they swap him out for Cal Pickard and try and find some mojo there. But what you're looking for is after a crazy road trip and frankly a really tough schedule, the Oilers will have played 16 out of 24 on the road, and they're going to be done with their entire East Coast schedule, Eastern Conference schedule on the road by December 18th. So they have a ton of games coming up at home that they should be able to right the ship and better days ahead. Maybe you slog through this 9-9-4 start and you go, okay, we're just living to see another day. But I don't know that there's been enough conversation about how much the depth on this team has eroded.
Yeah, and especially defensively. So is that somewhere that maybe if they get an elite talent and make sort of a move here, they could get to a level where you see because it, time is running out. I know we're early in the season, but it's not that early if they continue to play like this. And then also, I want to ask you about Connor Ingram. I don't think he's the solution. So where do they go in terms of adding something on the back end and solving the goaltending situation?
I struggle to find a fit for them because if they're going to go trade for a goalie, not only do you have to give up assets, you also have to pry pieces off of your roster because they don't have the cap space to take on a goalie that makes more. And so obviously it would be, Skinner or Pickard out. Okay, there's some cap savings, but you need $5 additional million if you're going to get a $6 million goalie or $4 additional million bucks. Where's that coming from on your roster?
Right.
Given that this team doesn't have Corey Perry from last year. They don't have Evander Kane. They don't have Victor Arvidsson. Like those things piled up in a way for the Oilers that I think they thought they'd be better off managing and handling, and they just haven't been.
Yeah, not a good start. Not what we had hoped for the road trip or what we thought we might see from this group. But as you mentioned, a chance to turn things around at home in the upcoming schedule. Okay, let's talk about the Chicago Blackhawks. They were up 2-0. They carried that lead into the third period, and then a little bit of chaos led to a 3-goal surge for the Seattle Kraken. And all of a sudden, Chicago Blackhawks are on the losing side of things and not where they wanted to be last night, Frank.
Definitely not. And I don't think anyone walked out of the United Center affiliated with the Chicago Blackhawks feeling good about what they just saw. So here's the sequence, and it's Connor Bedard in on a breakaway in the final 4 minutes of the game. And here's this whack right on his hands. And there's no call. And you can see him make an impassioned plea to the official, and he's gesturing and he's yelling and he's saying, "Are you bleeping kidding me?" But I understand his frustration because that is a slash on the hands. It's a call 100% of the time, and it's a call that should have been made. And you can freeze frame it, Zapruder it. It's impacted the shot without question. I don't think it's a penalty shot, but I think it's a 2-minute penalty. And that's a great freeze frame there from Jared. It's right on the hands. So it's blatant. Okay. The issue is, and first off, full stop. Connor Bedard has had an explosive start to the season. He's been one of the 5 best players in the league. And he's trying to also earn his stripes with the stripes. He's trying to develop these relationships. He puts the guy on blast in front of 20,000 people. And I understand why the reaction is to give him the unsportsmanlike conduct, which he did. And the Kraken scored and won the game. And Connor Bedard took full responsibility for it after the game,
100%.
saying, "Hey, I need to be better. I need to find a way to manage my emotions better." But this is a double down on the wrong call. You made the wrong call the first time. You should have called a penalty. So you didn't. Okay, fine. You blew it. You missed it. But know the situation. It's a tie game. It's the final 4 minutes, and you blew the call. So now because you have thin skin, you're going to give Connor Bedard a penalty and you're going to put the Kraken on the power play so they can win the game. I'm sorry. I don't think 2 wrongs make a right in this situation. I think this was wrong all the way around.
Yeah, and you hear that echoed with Jeff Blashill's comments. He did not agree. He thought the call should have been made and it should have been a penalty there, and we can see it here. the statement from
Yeah, I
Jeff
mean,
Blunt.
look, I think he said it so perfect. I don't know what was said, but it better have been really, really personal to be that sensitive. We can
Mhm.
read lips. We know that Connor Bedard said, "Are you bleeping kidding me?" That's actually what came out of his mouth. So that to me doesn't rise to the level of, despite the gesturing, and I agree, like fully agree that he needs to keep his emotions in check. But it was a bad missed call. It's okay to be like, these guys have so much on the line. It's okay to be upset and impassioned about that call. So again, if he didn't start talking about your mom or your kids or your dog, I don't really understand why this rises to the level of an unsportsmanlike conduct to then decide the game at the other end of the ice. I think this was a total miss and mistake.
Yeah, definitely a miss and the impact on the game. Now Chicago has an opportunity tonight to bounce back. They're playing the Buffalo Sabres, who have not been good. So an opportunity here for Chicago to flush it right away and find their way back in the win column. But definitely disappointing when the officiating leads to an impact of the game of that sort, especially late in the game. All right, someone who's making a big impact, as always, Alex Ovechkin. Frank, he's got 7 goals in his last 6 games, and he talked early on about, being out to a slow start, 7 points in his first 12 games, but he seems to have hit his stride again, and he's doing it in style at the age of 40. I mean, he just hasn't stopped. What have you seen from him? It's been a couple weeks since we've really keyed in on Alex Ovechkin.
I mean, reports of Alex Ovechkin's demise have been greatly exaggerated. We were all thinking, okay, final year of his contract, 40 years old, has now been named the NHL's goal scoring king. He broke the record. What's left to accomplish and achieve? What's going to be the driver for this guy? And you see him 2 goals out of his first 12 games, and you go, okay, this is the slowdown we all thought was coming like 5 years ago. And then you get, oh, wait, another hat trick last night in Montreal. You get a guy who's finding a way to do it in a different way because, believe it or not, Kate, Alex Ovechkin with 10 goals so far hasn't scored one from his familiar left circle on the ice. So he's done it as not a one-trick pony, a guy who's added some different ways to score. He seems as energetic as ever. I mean, look at this goal last night at the Bell Center. I mean, he's finding ways to get shots off quickly. I mean, this is also on the power play. One opportunity, one shot. And by the way, the Washington Capitals chase Sam Montembeault as the Montreal Canadiens have allowed 24 goals against, I think, in their last 3 home games, something like that. It's been poor. And so the Caps take full advantage. And I mean, what a special night for Ovechkin, who just continues to pile on every day. It's a new record, a new feat, a new something. And you look down at the stats and you go, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe 10 goals in 21 games, on track for 40 again. Maybe this guy really can get to 1,000.
I was going to say, are we back to rehashing that conversation? Is it realistic if he continues to play at this pace? Does he stick around?
Look,
His body's obviously holding up, which would be my number one question. And then second, mentally, it looks like he's having fun out there. Does he want
he's
to
a tank. He's a
Yeah,
tank. He's not going anywhere, and he's got 8 goals in 10 games. Like, who am I to say that this guy can't score 1,000? I thought I was on safe and solid ground before saying I doubt he's going to get to 1,000, and now it looks like, oh my God, this is like how quickly he ripped off 10 goals, 8 goals is insane.
absolutely. It's unreal. So they win 8-4, but there was one other storyline. We want to congratulate Dylan Strome on the birth of his third daughter, Kimberly Sutton Strome. And Frank, that was such a tough one because you felt the emotion after the game. He found out before the game during warmup that his wife had gone to the hospital earlier than expected. And then by the end of the first period, she'd had the baby. So there was no opportunity at that point for him to make it. And you could tell the emotion. I'm not a parent. Maybe you can speak to this, but he seemed quite overwhelmed with emotion because he wanted to be there. But his wife, obviously a great medical team around them, and they have a happy and healthy new baby girl.
Oh, you feel for him because it's such a helpless position to be in. You're in another country. You find out at 5:30 before a 7 o'clock game, And there's like quite literally nothing you could do. Even if you could get to a private jet in 15 minutes,
Right.
which is impossible, you're not making it back to Washington in time in order to be there. And so, it, to be able to have that news and go out and put up a 3-point night is it's mind blowing. But
That's what's wild.
I can't really imagine. And I've been in a similar situation actually, and I'll give you a quick story because it actually involves the Capitals. I nearly missed the birth of my daughter because I was covering a Caps Penguins playoff series. And the funny part about it is, as a parent, you realize that the second and third successive children come faster than the first one did. The great water slide of life happens quickly for the next kids in line. The first time around, my son was born. Labor was like 30 hours. I think I ate 4 meals there. It was forever. And I was just like, dude, this process, what? It's insane how long it takes. So the second child, our daughter, again, 2016, I'm covering Caps Penguins. This is when the Penguins won their first of back-to-back. And I'm in Pittsburgh. The game ends. My wife calls me and says, hey, my water broke. And so Pittsburgh to Philly, it's about a 4.5-hour drive. I had a rental car just in case because I knew we were getting close to the due date. Knowing that the first one took 30 hours, I was like, dude, I got tons of time here. I'm good. So I actually, right outside the media exit in Pittsburgh, there's a total dive bar. I was like, I had a long day, tons of TV and
You did
writing.
not.
I walked in there. I had a beverage. And then I was like, you know what? It's going to be 30 hours. Like, I'm good. I'm cool. I walked back to my hotel. I laid on the bed for a half an hour. I scrolled on my phone. I packed my bag leisurely and I got in my rental car around 1:00. And I'm thinking, all good. I'm going to drive across the Pennsylvania Turnpike in the middle of the night. It was raining. Oh my God. It was an insane drive. And like, honestly, I was so tired. I was up for 24 hours at this point. I was like, one famous NHL coach told me that the secret to staying awake on long drives in the middle of the night on scouting trips is to pluck nose hairs because it gives you a shot of adrenaline. So I'm plucking nose hairs. I'm trying to stay awake. I'm just grinding away on this mountainous drive across Pennsylvania, which is not fun. And I'm 2 exits away and I get a call from the doctor and he's like, buddy, you're not making it. And he's like, you're missing, the birth of your daughter. He said, I've tried to hold your wife off as long as I can. I can't do it. And I can hear my wife in the background and she's yelling, get this thing out of me. And so like, I'm like, again, I'm struggling. I'm 2 exits away. I pedal down. I roll in there. I make it literally by like 3 minutes. And the doctor just like hands me, hey, here's your daughter. And like, okay, I'm like, what just happened here? And then I was like, wow, that's great. And then I passed out on the couch. And my wife was like, still like, you are such an arsehole because the fact that that's how this whole thing happened, you went and had a beer and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short.
That was going to be my
Penguins,
question. Did you come clean? Yes.
I did. Oh yeah. I told her 100%. Like, I mean, no secrets here. I worked a long day. I wanted a beer. So anyway, I survived. My daughter, I made it. My wife, I'm still married. All those things. But I can understand the helpless feeling from Dylan Strome and how tough that situation is because you want to do everything you can. You work so hard to make sure that everything's in a good spot that to not be there and have it happen surprisingly and quickly, I'm sure it just throws you through a loop. Those things you can never go back and put the toothpaste back in the tube. And that's hard. And that's real life.
Absolutely. And you've got to expect that he's really relishing that time. It's extra special today because they were able to fly home and he's likely cuddled up with his family and his new daughter. So congratulations to the Stromes. And what a night for Dylan Strome with a 3-point effort in that 8-4 win over the Habs. All right, we talked about the Jets off the top of the show. But Frank, I want to ask you about some news that you broke this morning. Brad Lambert granted permission to shop around for a trade by the Winnipeg Jets. He's got just 1 goal in 4 games this season. How did we get to this point?
Well, he's been sent back to the AHL's Manitoba Moose, which is really kind of maybe the story in a nutshell. This is a first-round pick who's got tons of talent, was named to the AHL All-Rookie team in 2024. He's a guy who is a really talented scorer and player and hasn't really broken through. And I think in some ways, I can't speak for him, but there's probably a lack of opportunity that's in front of him, given that the Jets are in win now mode. They're relying on veterans. Like, there's no clear path for him to be an everyday NHL player. And he's had some moments and flashes. He was the second star a few weeks ago in Pittsburgh earlier this month, scored a goal in a Jets win against the Penguins. And so I look at him as a guy who has so much more to give. And I think he's a really interesting trade chip because there's tons of teams out there, Kate, that fit at 21 years old. He fits the age scheme that they're looking for. Calgary, probably Vancouver, the Flyers. Like, go down the list of all these teams that are Montreal, you could see making sense. Like, there's a lot of teams that are in that sort of, hey, we're building towards something.
Right.
The only question is, will the Jets actually trade him? And that part, I think, remains to be seen. But Brad Lambert, to me, is a really interesting piece that someone should be calling about, because we've talked a lot about Utah Mammoth and their success. And I think of some of the great junior hockey combinations, and our guest coming up in Jon Goyens, like he'll remember clearly the Jonathan Drouin, Nathan McKinnon connection and how special that was in junior. Well, you saw it reunited at the NHL level. And I think of Dylan Guenther and the success that Brad Lambert had with him in junior. And I'm going, there's a reason why that worked. And it wasn't just Dylan Guenther carrying him. And I think there's something to be unearthed with this kid.
Yeah. And before we wrap on the Jets, I just wanted to ask you, we know that they want to add some depth on the back end. That's a likely factor. So where do you think, when you think of all of these other teams that he could be a good fit for, how does this factor into the Winnipeg Jets decision making on actually pulling the plug on a move or pulling trigger on the move?
Yeah, that's what they're going to have to weigh. And is there a situation out there with a defenseman who might be in a similar spot that they could, do a swap that makes sense? And the first guy that came to mind, and a couple people had put it in my mentions, was, what about Pavel Mintyukov in Anaheim? Because he is also a first round pick of the same draft class. His career has kind of gone in fits and starts here in the last few months. He's been out of the Ducks lineup after being a full-time NHLer. And so people had said to me, Brad Lambert for Pavel Mintyukov 1-for-1, who says no? And I'm going, I'm pretty sure it's the Ducks, because they've got a full-blown NHLer and Brad Lambert hasn't become that yet. But position for position, organizationally, it makes a lot of sense. I still think at this point, probably a long shot, but you asked the question, that's the type of deal that I'd be thinking towards. Is there another defenseman out there that we might be able to add and grow into our mix in Winnipeg?
Makes sense. All right. Well, it is Friday. So for TGIF, we have some blind rankings. You're in the hot seat once again. And this time we're taking a look at best mustaches of all time in the NHL. And Frank, before we get into it, I do want to give an honorable mention here. I added the photo in of Cole Caulfield because we started the month of November with his mustache, and you had to really zoom in
His
to find
what? What is
anything.
that? That's
I
like
don't know. A little,
that's
I don't
peach
know if you could
fuzz is
call it
what that is.
a cookie catcher, lip
Yeah.
warmer, none of that. But
Peach
hey,
fuzz.
honorable mention, you can see a little bit of growth. So we're going to give them just an honorable mention because that's how we kicked off the month of November. So we're going with that. But I have got your 5 picks. How confident do you feel? Are you a facial hair enthusiast?
No, I can't grow it. And now if I can, it comes in gray, and that's not happening. So I've got enough white gray going on. I don't need any more. And I
Okay.
think generally it just makes me look and feel dirty. So I'm gonna not. But I would say that I think I know who the number one is, and I'm gonna save it because there's only one true answer.
I hope I've put them in the right order then. Let's start with Paul McLean.
Ooh, that's a good one. He has had a good lip duster for a while, and it really grew nicely into his older age with the distinguished gray look. I'm gonna say 3.
Okay. Wendell Clark.
Wendell Clark always had a good one. I think he's gone more full Fu Manchu of late. I'm going to say Wendell Clark 4.
Okay. A current guy who's got a lot of publicity for his mustache, Philip Forsberg. This majestic GQ Vogue-esque shot was the best part of this.
Kind of makes me feel uneasy, especially when he's got the little waxed curly Q at the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to say 5. I'm not a fan of it.
Wow. Shots fired at Forsberg. All right. Number 4, George Peros.
George Peros is 2. It's a great one. It's definitely a big part of his persona repertoire. I can't think of him without it. So I'm going to go George Peros 2, and in the 5 spot we had Philip Forsberg.
Okay. And lastly, I don't know, this has got to be the one that you guessed, but Lanny McDonald.
Yeah, that was it. There's only one proper answer to this question, and that is Lanny McDonald. I think, look, first off, one of the game's true gentlemen, and his story has been amazing. I did a podcast with Lanny last year or so, before he retired as chair of the Hockey Hall of Fame. He was dead. He was on the ground dead in the Calgary airport and revived by bystanders. An amazing story. And he is that is the all-time great. I mean, there's nothing close to how good this is. The helmet, the mustache, the leadership, everything. And you can't have a mustache ranking without Lanny. So I was banking that he'd be in there at some point. If there wasn't, there wouldn't
Fair.
be a ranking worth doing.
Absolutely. That is a filthy duster, if you will. But I think you did pretty good. I think this is one of your best of the season. And I'm
Okay.
sure you can
It
agree
was
with that.
very definitive, right? I wasn't doing a lot of waffling on this one.
No, you had a plan and you stuck to it with what your gut was telling you. All right. Well, we're going to welcome in our guest. It's Jon Goyens, video analyst and former head coach of the QMJHL. He's going to break down some of the tape as he does with us weekly here on Frankly Hockey. And Jon, we love having you on the show. You're one of the best power play gurus in the game. So we're going to put you on the spot with breaking down the tape here. And I want to start with Boston. They've got the 4th best power play in the NHL at this point in the season. What stood out to you about how they've been able to be so effective and surprise many with the capabilities of the power play this season?
Well, one of the only guys that's left over from Boston's previous power play prowess is Pasternak. When he played with the likes of Marchand, Bergeron, Torrey Krug, guys like that on the Boston Bruins. And I'm not going to lie, in 2019, 2020, my team in Baie-Comeau looked at Boston as an example for quick strike offense on the power play. The number of power play face-off plays that they had were tremendous. There's a ton of poise. The thing with Boston, just like the other 2 teams we're going to break down today, is it looks like they're a 1-3-1 1 second, then they look like there's something else. There's a bumper, then there's no bumper. It looks like they're going to strike off a zone, offensive zone face-off win, and then all of a sudden they don't force themselves into making a play when it's not available. So the poise right now lends itself where a guy like Pasternak is reaping the benefits, but it's also been the ability when McAvoy's going, he's running the power play. McAvoy's out, Lindholm is going. Lindholm up front is out, Arvidsson fills in. And then the guy over the last 2 seasons, Geeky, has just been kind of a revelation on the power play. So as we fire up these clips, we're going to see how there's a ton of movement. Really, the first unit runs the show. Here you got Blumel in one of his first games with Boston, and he's off a draw, and he's in motion, but they make you think they're going backdoor. No, they're going high deflection to Geeky in the slot. Same game, face-off, quick strike. Don't go up top. Go to the back door. Doesn't work. Now it's all about recover pucks and quick strikes. And within 4 seconds, it's in the back of the net. So it's not about necessarily formations. If you're giving them too much time and space, well, speed and poise will make you pay on zone entries, and it's in the back of the net. Here against Montreal, I was on this call actually. Watch how Zacha and Arvidsson switch. And they switch because Pasternak has the puck and he wants a guy on his forehand by the goal line. Watch again. Here's a switch because it's on Pasternak's stick, and then it opens up the one-timer from the bumper spot. Once again, you see these movements, and now it's on the opposite side. And now it really gets teams thinking, they're going to go to Zacha. Now Paster's like, hey, I haven't touched the puck. I'm moving. And just this traveling, that kind of flash screen creates lanes for one-timers. And when in doubt, you need your best scorer to give second efforts, and you got to sniff out a loose puck, dive and hammer it in. And last but not least, power play 2's got to come in and help you out. This is a legit pass. I had to look at it. I had to zoom in and look at Pasternak, look at Kastelik going, you, buddy, because that was not a missed shot opportunity. He actually knew 88's on. I'm throwing it to the flank blindly.
Have they been the biggest surprise for you so far on the power play?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the last 2 seasons, parts of 2 seasons, they've really struggled on the power play. They couldn't really get things consistently going. And you could tell that at times Pasternak, and again, covering games at the Bell Center, you would see times where he would take these like wild shots from just about anywhere where he was kind of like, F it, and just like kind of hope it to the net. Now it looks like everybody's really in sync.
So in your view, with the success Boston has had, is that scheme, is that coaching? Because it doesn't seem to be a personnel thing. Like, I don't know that you look at the Bruins as outside of Pasternak or maybe McAvoy and say, wow, those are some 5 of the most talented power play players we have in the league. To get them on one monster unit, that's super impressive. It seems more like they're reading off of each other, but also going in with a pretty distinct game plan.
So I think one of my biggest pet peeves for power play and coaching staffs at all levels are coaches that just come in and say, this is how it's going to be. Shut your mouths and do what I say. You know, the old, like, I say jump, you say how high, that's it. And I'll give you a story from when Jonathan Drouin was 15 years old, playing midget AAA for me, knocked on my door one day and said, Coach, I want to do what Datsuk does in Detroit. I said, okay, talk. And he goes, I don't want to play on my off wing. He goes, I'm a passer. I want to play on my strong side because every time someone pressures me from above, below, I'm now jammed onto my backhand. Why don't I play on my forehand side? Why not when Matheson, because he was on the same power play, I was a little bit spoiled. Matheson walks the line, and then I could walk up. I'm on my forehand side. If they take away that, I could give it back to Matheson on a one-timer because he's also a lefty. And so that collaboration, and that became a revelation for me, was that we've got to stop as coaches saying what we see in video that we can pause, rewind, and really look at through a microscope is the right way. Like, we have all the answers. When players are in the action, they're getting hacked, they're getting whacked, their lanes, their sight lines are vastly different. And so if you do not build that collaborative kind of conversation with the elite talent of the league, then you're missing out on opportunities to create a power play where the players feel like they have ownership of the power play, and you see that ownership grow in kind of a real synergy as the power plays develop throughout the season. And then it really becomes a partnership with the coaches. And all 3 teams we're going to cover today, all 3 have new coaching staffs.
Interesting. And shout out to the Lac St. Louis Lions from midget AAA, Mike Matheson and Jonathan Drouin on one power play. Pretty awesome for you.
And Duclair.
And Anthony Duclair. Yeah, not bad. Let's talk about the coach, suspect. Well, let's talk about the Dallas Stars, because I kind of view their power play as the opposite of Boston. Like, their personnel is super elite, the guys that they can put out there at any given position. And now you think about some of the decisions Glenn Gullitson's going to have to make whenever someone like Matt Duchene comes back. They're going to have to find a way to work him in. And, if Heiskanen's at the top, that means Thomas Harley isn't. So what do you see from Dallas and how much they've been clicking under a new coach?
Well, yeah, when a guy like Duchene comes back, the reality is Duchene and Seguin are on the second unit. That's the reality with a guy like Harley, and sometimes it's Harley and Lindell, and then you find a third forward to go in there, or it's 1 and 4. The top unit with Heiskanen, Robertson, Hintz, Wyatt Johnson, and Rantanen has been outstanding. And one of the areas beyond quick strikes off of loose pucks is their 1-3-1. So their bottom 4. So Heiskanen's way up, and their bottom 4 is hash marks or deeper. And the reason for that is because they want to open the depth to Heiskanen so he could have more time and space. The other part is they're working a lot of plays below the goal line, whether they're passing it and carrying it through the goal line, whether there's installing 2 players below the goal line to make PKs really kind of look over the shoulder. And as we fire it up, again, it's a power play that makes you miss. But let's start right off zone entries. If you're sleeping, speed and poise will create execution. And when you got a guy like Hintz, he's going to make you pay. Rantanen just comes up, shuffling his feet. 2 guys bite. Perfect. That's 1 2-on-1. Here's another 2-on-1. It's in the back of the net. Again, power play faceoffs. I apologize to Anaheim because it seems to be them again. But again, don't force it when it's not available. Now you have an opportunity to just sift one on net. Great net presence by Wyatt Johnson. Similar rotation to Boston. Watch Rantanen. Now the lane from high to low, and that's a tip pass right to Rantanen. It's in the back of the net. Now let's work below the goal line. Look at the space between the forwards and Heiskanen. There's a massive, massive amount of space, and there's different ways to find that bumper guy. And again, watch Rantanen. He's going to carry it deep. There is no real set formation here. He wants Anaheim to collapse, creates a ton of space for Heiskanen, and it's a quick onto Rantanen stick to Johnson, and then bang in the back of the net, under handling pucks. They don't screw themselves by stick handling too much. Johnson sets up on the other side. That opened up the pocket for Hintz. And then boom, Johnson gets on the rebound. Once again, if it's available, you take it. And this is a great little spin play by Wyatt Johnson. He is benefiting from the Rantanen effect. And look at here, Montreal gets real passive. Passive is not a good recipe against Dallas. And then 2 quick passes, and they make you pay. So now 1-3-1, nope, not anymore. They rotate out of that 1-3-1, creating longer passes and 2-on-1s down low. So it's this constant different look. What I call the absence of bumper. The bumper drifts away, which then all of a sudden PKs, who a lot of times go into diamond formation and they want to take away that seam pass, all of a sudden they're defending a ghost.
Jon, when you're looking at the Pittsburgh Penguins compared to the Dallas Stars, what do you see from them? Of course, they've got elite talent. They've got Crosby, they've got Malkin, they've got Karlsson up there, but they're converting at 34.1%, and they've been so effective. So what's been the key there? Are there similarities? Are there differences?
There are some similarities. Obviously, Mr. Sidney Crosby's having an absolute outstanding start on the power play. It's incredible. But what's even more incredible is that the Pittsburgh Penguins only have 44 power plays on the year. Dallas has 71, and the Boston Bruins have 73. So 15 for 44. And the other part, their second power play unit has scored 4 of their 15 goals. That's a massive contribution when you think about percentages. And that helps when you have a Chris Letang QBing that. You get a Mantha. And of course, what they do a lot of times is they get a guy like Malkin some extra time on that second power play. So one massive element, Rickard Rakell goes out. Who fills in? Kid Kendall. I call him Kid Kindell because Sid the Kid eventually will leave, and Kid Kindell is just walking in here and he's reading off these guys. His hockey sense is tremendous, and he's understanding that it's not X marks the spot type of power play. So there's similarities to the other two power plays. Quick strikes off loose pucks and a lot of movement. So let's fire up these clips. So here, look like a 1-3-1. Okay, let's move it. Actually, you got Karlsson's going to walk the line. Watch Sidney Crosby. Now, look at that movement from Malkin. And now there's a double threat here. And boom, it's in the back of the net. And there's Kindell going to Sidney Crosby. Again, Karlsson's up at the top. He's going to walk the line. There's some movement here. And then Crosby eventually is going to find himself back in his office, which is at that first post. And as they move it around off of 1-3-1, he's in tight and he's got a bang-bang play. Now, for some reason, Toronto goes real passive. Kindell had to go to the bench to get a stick, and they just stand around. So Kindell makes himself available on the flank. They're able to thread the needle, and there's zero pressure from Toronto, and he puts it short side. So again, 1-3-1 with movement. And as we see guys rotate around, it's partially because they want to get to certain spots, but it's also because they want to get PKs guessing. And then again, quick strikes. Letang to Mantha right down the pipe. It's in the back of the net. And then again, second power play unit on with Malkin, and it's got everybody guessing. But again, if you go passive PK against Pittsburgh, they'll make you pay. And when in doubt, they get a little creative off of zone entry, and Brezzo puts it right off, right under the bar, right off a zone entry. So again, these three power plays have and will continue to keep PKs guessing because a lot of teams are just waiting for these three teams to get into a setup, and they're not doing it.
So when it comes to sizing up the common thread, you touched on it, but do you have a preference? Umbrella or 1-3-1? What's the better solution? And is it a hybrid of both at times within the same power play?
I think it's like anything else, right? You don't want to completely throw out your game plan on the power play based on every single opponent, right? It's not football. There's too many games, too many adjustments. But the reality is, can your 1-3-1 roll into an umbrella? Can your 1-3-1 roll into a spread where you have three basically deep and two guys up top? And it depends on the rotation. So I think it's you have to take into account what the PK is going to give you and the strengths of your group. But again, I go back to that collaboration, right? All these guys have video and pre-scouts available on their phones. All these teams are doing it now. And if you have a really engaged group, when they come in for a power play meeting, I did it in junior, I'd be like, Frank, what do you think? And you'd be like, okay, we're playing these guys. I think this face-off play would be the best first quick strike. I think we should rotate from a 1-3-1 into a spread. Boom. What do you guys think? Boom. And the collaborative element really develops through that. The ownership builds, but I think it's really a rotation. And if you become stale, we saw what happened in Washington's power play. It became stale. And until Spencer Carberry convinced Ovechkin to start moving a little bit and exchanging with Karlsson, that power play was going to continue to become stale. When they got moving, all of a sudden their power play became a major factor again.
Makes a lot of sense. Jon, thank you so much for your insight. As always, we'll see you again when we catch up and take a look at the tape at some point next week. That's Jon Goyens, former head coach in the QMJHL and our video analyst, joining us here on Frankly Hockey. All right, Frank, we've talked extensively about injuries in the NHL, but do you have a timeline on Drew Doughty's injury that you can share with us?
I do. Sources indicate Drew Doughty will miss approximately 2 to 3 weeks after taking that shot off of his foot in Ottawa over the weekend. Not ideal for a guy who at times over these last couple seasons has struggled to stay healthy, another freak accident. And look, I think the next concern and question, as everyone is asking at this time of year, is how will, if any way, this impact the 2026 Olympics and Team Canada? You know how desperately Drew Doughty wants to be there. It shouldn't. He should be back on the ice before Christmas. The only question is, has Drew Doughty's play kept him on the Olympic team for 2026? That part remains to be seen. So Drew Doughty going to miss the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Tough blow for Drew Doughty. And you mentioned with every injury right now, we're thinking immediately, what's the timeline? Where does that put us with the roster decisions? And where does that put him for his return to action for the post-roster decisions in the final stretch to the Olympics? Okay, well, we talked about Movember in TGIF, but also the NHL taking a look around the league at Hockey Fights Cancer. Now, one of the teams that does it so well is the Nashville Predators. And for hashtag hockey today, we're going to highlight UC Saros, who has a very touching tribute to some family members from the Nashville Predators organization who have been affected by cancer. So there's 4 different faces on here. One is Lexi Rogers, daughter of head equipment manager Pete Rogers; Sheila Crisp, wife of longtime commentator Terry Crisp; Aaron Donick, the late wife of Willie Donick. And then if you've been around the rink, you've heard him, you know him. It's partner Craig Baugh. He is the locker room attendant with the Nashville Predators. So you can't not know when partner's around. He's a great guy. And of course, Willie Donick, such a legendary member of their broadcast team. And he lost his wife, Erin, who was a philanthropist and a big member of the community. But Frank, I think what this highlights, really special of UC Saros to do that, but highlights Hockey Fights Cancer and how we've all been touched. I lost my mom to ovarian cancer after a long battle. So we've all been touched by it, and it is special to see the players getting involved in honoring members of their bigger team outside of the roster and the coaching staff here on the Nashville Predators. Thought it was really well done and a nice touch by Juice there.
Yeah, really well done. And you're right. I mean, it's sad that, when we have these Hockey Fights Cancer nights, everyone's holding up a card and you could probably write 5 or 7 or 10 people that I mean, it's incredible to see how this disease touches literally every family. And I hope we're on our way to, with nights like these and months like these in the NHL, to finding some cures.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, you are up in the win column. When it comes to the sports books, the Dallas Stars helped you out with that one last night. And we talked about it earlier, the Blackhawks visiting the Buffalo Sabres. And you've got some insight into what you think people should be putting your money on. What is that?
Yeah, the Hawks have been hot, and probably even hot and bothered after that loss and the non-call and the way that it ended. So look, not incredibly far travel on the back-to-back as they go to Buffalo. They also announced their new black third uniforms today, just in time for Black Friday. So big day for the Blackhawks. And look, the Buffalo Sabres have been relatively brutal. And I know at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings, I'm not breaking any news to you, but I don't think this Hawks team, even on the back-to-back, should be this big of a dog. So, I've won 3 in a row, up to plus 7.4 units on the season. And so these odds, courtesy of our friends at BetMGM, I'm going to go Hawks on the money line at plus 150 to eke out a win in Buffalo. And it seems, interestingly enough, like at least what's come into this point, 56% of it has been shaded toward the Hawks.
All right. Well, they're going to be focused on beating the Buffalo Sabres, but they're also going to be keeping an eye on Mason West, one of their draft picks, who is actually playing a different sport today.
Yeah, and not just any draft pick. This is a first-round pick from this past June's draft. And when the Chicago Blackhawks selected Mason West in the first round, one of their 3 first-round picks, he had said to them, look, I want to go and chase a Minnesota State high school football championship. And I think at the time they just said, hey, sure, whatever. They knew going in drafting him that he was significantly interested in football. He had 6 Division I offers at his disposal. And he said, no, I want to be a hockey player, but I just want to live out this dream. And the Edina Hornets entered the Minnesota 6A prep bracket really not as favorites. They've won some massive games, a couple upsets, and now here they are in the state championship game tonight, Friday night at US Bank Stadium, home of the Minnesota Vikings, where, last week in the semifinal, Mason West went off, and you can watch this dime that he dropped. It's like dropping in a quarter from 10 yards away on a Coke machine. It's beautiful. Mason West, 6'5", 6'6", throws a great ball. And the fun part about this story is not just a kid chasing his dream, the Blackhawks' willingness to let him go do that. As soon as his football season is over, he's going right to the USHL to play for the Fargo Force. It's the fact that his stick-to-itiveness, his interest in trying to push this forward, his last sort of opportunity on a high school football field. It's an amazing story. And so he's got a really cool opportunity on Friday night. And the other fun part is there's been lots of hockey players that have been in this spot before. And even in his town, Anders Lee, the captain of the New York Islanders, was the quarterback for the Edina Hornets and had a massive senior season. We've seen other players, Mark Alt, who was a Philadelphia Flyers draft pick, didn't quite make it as an NHL player, but he's another guy, massive Division I offers, playing in Minnesota, could have gone to play college football somewhere. These guys picked and chose hockey, which many Minnesotans, I'm sure, want to do. And I just think this West story is incredible in the sense that the Blackhawks knew they were getting a competitor and athlete, and it's, can we make him into a hockey player with the attributes that he has? And so if you've got 3 first-round picks, you take a specimen like this one in that draft. You got Frundell at number 2 overall. You've got Nestrazel, who's been fantastic in college hockey and is going to set a record for most NCAA goals scored by a Czech player. And then you throw in a Mason West and you go, what a first round that's looking like for Chicago.
Pretty solid flexibility to take that pick. And also you've got to think about the character of this kid. And they obviously saw something special in him making this decision and sticking to it, as you mentioned. All right. Well, that wraps another week here on Frankly Hockey. We'll be right back with you on Monday at 11 Central. Thank you for watching, whether you were watching on Victory Plus, X, or on YouTube. We're thankful you chose to spend your time with us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.